and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking with Mikko from Inbot. Now, I've known Inbot for, well, you guys have been around, I've known about you for 2 years. Okay, so I'm early on the train, so can you tell me a little bit about your company?
Yes, Inbot was founded in January 2013 on the premise of disrupting enterprise software from mobile. So we wanted to take a completely different viewpoint on starting from the end users and from the consumers. There's this big buzzword of consumerization of the enterprise, and we thought that it was just a buzzword until somebody did something about giving power back to the people. So that was the foundational premise of Inbot.
So you guys are in a private beta right now?
Yes, we are. We have currently 100 teams with about 300 users that we are rolling out to about 250 more companies still before we are going public.
So can you talk about the kind of work that you're doing with some of these companies, like what exactly you're doing? And I know some of the examples we talked about last time was around call centers and around consumer experience and some things like that. Can you talk about the evolution of maybe the past year since we've spoken?
Yeah, so Inbot is a customer relations assistant. What does it mean is that we help the salespeople do their jobs with the customers with their mobile devices without having to resort to using complex enterprise suites like Salesforce or whatnot. So what we do is we help people do their jobs with the apps that they really like to use and want to use, capture that information from those applications using the available APIs, and then enrich that data and make it meaningful for the businesses for CRM reporting purposes so that the salespeople can focus on doing their jobs and not on reporting on administrative work that is often the big plague of the sales forces of the world.
So what's the advantage to going with you guys over, say, Salesforce? Because they're like, the one thing that I do have to say about Salesforce this conference, they have this thing called the RoboChop, and so they've done the back-end infrastructure for a giant robots that are creating custom-designed furniture, right? So they're cutting it up, and Heroku provided the back-end, and it's all really interesting and nice, but it all seemed very easy, right? To create their app on Heroku and to do all of this. So if it's easier with you, like what's the real advantage to going with you guys over, say, Salesforce?
So. There's a big difference between an app that is owned by the company and an app that you own. So let's take a simple example of contacts. When you have contacts, most salespeople treat the contacts as their most valuable asset. So if that asset is residing on the company side and you have no right to it, then you have no value. Like in that sense, all the salespeople have their personal copies of every contact that they ever meet that they walk away with when they go outside the company. So what we say is that you know what, that's your value. That's the Rolodex that you built. That's the network that you created. You should own it. And the company should only get copies of those contacts that you aggregated over the years when it's relevant for the business that you're doing with that company that you're working with. And in today's world, it's not only anymore the structure of a company with the big boss asking employees to do things. It's more like a big network economy where you have agents, you have contractors, you have freelancers, you have consultants, you have employees, and you have part-time employees, and all kinds of 1099 contractors, and so on. So you have all these like fuzzy structure of things, and obviously partner companies. So you can't anymore manage this big infrastructure of singular software where you have to educate everybody to use because these guys are not working for you, others than in this contractor relationship. So. This creates a lot of complexity around the company to manage this business. And what we say is that if the companies focus on data and let go on the apps, they will gain compared to the current situation.
That's really interesting. Now, one of the more interesting conversations that I've been having here at CeBIT this week has been around artificial intelligence in the cloud. And basically, from a lot of what we've been seeing around is like people just pooping data into the cloud and not really being able to have an intelligent way of dealing with it. Now, a lot of these infrastructure companies say that they are doing that, but when you dig a bit deeper, you realize it's not very smart. So where do you kind of see AI in the cloud going, or what's your position within that topic?
Yeah, so artificial intelligence is obviously a big buzzword, and it's very easy to misuse it. So we should take small baby steps towards towards adding the intelligence to the data that we have. So we started with very simple things. Like first of all, when you have contacts in your address book, we wanted to sort those contacts based on the contextual relevance to you. So whenever you open the address book, we try to understand what's your context. So maybe you have a meeting coming up in 1 hour. So that contact should be on the top because it's quite likely that you are going to contact that person just before the meeting. Or whether there's an unresponded email from some person that you need to respond to, maybe that person is more relevant to you until you respond to them. And then once you've done the response, then it's not necessarily anymore as relevant for the time being. So there's multiple other contexts that we can add to it, including location, including time, including somebody in your close proximity being in conversation with that person, other things that we can add into the mix to make it more intelligent. So our target is that this customer relations assistant needs to serve you what you want in terms of contacts with the least amount of effort on your end. You open the app, and then you see the contact that you want to contact, magically being right there in front of your face, not having to search for it.
I like that it's like magic.
Yeah, so we put a lot of effort to get it there. So we had an internal target of having only 3 letters maximum in the search box that you type in to find any contact you want. And right now we achieved that. So I don't have to look more than 3 letters of typing to find the person that I want to communicate with. And that's only one part of the contextual relevance that we are implying. We are applying that context to absolutely everything in the application so that it feels like an assistant to you. And we also let you converse with it later. So you can ask questions and you can get answers to your questions with it.
Oh, interesting. So for some of your existing clients, are you creating personalized contextual awareness?
It's already there in these baby steps. But as I said, over the time, we are able to utilize this context. So let's take another piece of context. Salespeople, when they are working with customers, they may lose sight on what's going on with this conversation. Mm-hmm. So they may think that being optimistic that I'm quite likely to close this deal. But we can look at the historical pattern of that person and then say that this communication pattern resembles more that of a losing streak than the winning streak. By analyzing the communication pattern of the winning deals that you had with the customers and the losing ones. So you should be aware of it, and you should do something about it. Maybe the customer responds a little bit slightly slower. Maybe it's more you who is communicating with them than then taking the initiative to communicating with you. Maybe there are some subtle hints of these things that we can analyze from the data with our intelligence that you cannot figure out yourself necessarily.
So in terms of contextual awareness, I've been having some real quite funny discussions where you're talking about meeting people here and you're having a one-on-one, like a conversation with somebody, trying to figure out if like so-and-so is coming. And I found that you can break down a person into 2 words, like likes Japan, lives in Bonn, right? You know what I mean? Like two kind of concepts. Now, when I've been having conversations around bringing that type of contextual awareness into like a company or some sort of infrastructure, the way that businesses or like the database can analyze data isn't necessarily the way that we analyze data, because like lives in Japan, likes Haribo, isn't necessarily 2 things that you may a computer might put together as a personal identification method. So like what's the kind of like more interesting way that you're trying to deal with these anomalies of personalization, because it's like when you're trying to make a computer more human, it's kind of around bringing in these like ancillary points of information.
So one easy way of doing it, it doesn't take any rocket science. The only thing you need to do is to let people converse with the computer. Just the simple act of conversation. When you say something like, let's say that the Slack bot in Slack, which is currently a popular enterprise software, it says, "Hello, what's your name?" Then you say your name. It feels natural. It just feels like you're conversing with someone, even though, there's lots of movies out there as well that are recently out, like Her and others that are basically presenting the artificial intelligence as something more human-like. So we don't have to be super advanced in our capabilities before we already can deliver you something that makes it feel more personal and makes it feel personable. As an application. So we are obviously targeting towards getting to those things and mixing up the personal engagement via conversations with the intelligence of the machine trying to add context to everything that you do.
I like that. The weirdest answer I've gotten this show is integrating your Facebook profile, and I was like, hell no. That sounds like the worst idea ever. You are not integrating my Facebook profile into some sort of enterprise solution for my contacts.
Yeah, I was asking in my Facebook page that there was this new announcement that Facebook likes to get your bank account details now via Facebook Messenger, and I was asking my friends like, would you like to do that? And they're like, hell no.
It's interesting, but like our online identities are definitely something that like now in this modern day we spend a lot of time cultivating. We were actually just talking off air about like LinkedIn and their API around corporate identity. So there's some interesting things happening in this field, and I'm not quite as up to date as you are. So I'm kind of excited to get a little bit of an update.
Yes. For those who don't know, LinkedIn decided to deprecate the public API by May 12th this year. So what it means is that there's currently 0 providers of professional identity that is widely available for all of these applications. And we thought that it's a good opportunity for us to come in and offer something different. So first of all, like you look at Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn as big social networks, they obviously know your identity because that identity is connected to so many things that they can say that with very high confidence that you are you. What we can do is that instead of taking these like large silos of information, like Facebook is its own silo, Twitter is its own silo, or LinkedIn is its own silo, we could offer your own contacts as a context to all the applications that you're working with. So instead of using a LinkedIn profile, we can say, hey, you have this contact, Mikko, in your address book, just use that. The benefit of using your own contacts is that first of all, you don't have to sell that data to advertisers via these silos. Secondly, you are constantly in control, and you always have whatever contacts you are working with right now available to you. So they don't have the requirement of being signed up to some specific social network to have that identity verified. What we're doing is we take your own contacts, verify them against, in the background, against the database of other contacts we have in the system, and make sense whether this contact is the person that you are meaning to be, and if you have high confidence of it, make it available to you over the API on these other applications that you use. And that's something that we think is groundbreaking. It's something that you can use a private API for your own contacts as a context in different applications that you use.
That's actually really interesting. I've been spending a little bit of time on LinkedIn again recently. I have a good friend of mine who responds to everybody who adds her and says, "Thanks for finding me. Was there any reason you did that?" I'm like, "Really? You respond to everybody who contacts you on LinkedIn?" And but it really occurred to me that it is a professional network that you can get the most out of. I just think that a lot of people just try to add people like it's adding friends in like a very insincere way. But when I started kind of taking her approach a little bit more to it, I started realizing that there was a tremendous amount of value to it. But the problem with, I think, when I look at the average person's LinkedIn profile is there's no context.
And that's exactly my point.
All of these people.
So in LinkedIn, let's say that you have connected with somebody on LinkedIn 5 years ago. It gives you no context whatsoever. People are asking like, "Hey, can you introduce me to that person?" And, I met that person. Them. Like I don't even remember where, but it was some trade show 5 years ago somewhere.
And now they're at a company that I'm really not familiar with.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing something that I don't know, and like you're never clicking on people's names in LinkedIn to find out what position they've gone into. You're more just kind of there because a bunch of weirdos have added you.
So now think of this from contextual perspective. So now that we have your context, so who you are talking with, how often, and in what ways, and keeping it privately as your own data, we are able to give you the context of it as well. So now you get these contacts that you're using, you start typing the contact's name in, for example, in an Evernote document or some place where you want to add this context of person, and you always get the context that you are most likely to be adding as the first suggestions. It becomes more natural. It becomes more magical. Things just work. And then they connect to the right place. And by the way, this contact that you tagged into in this specific application, that information is indexed under that contact, but also all the other information that you had with. So you can always go to this index of data that is under that person and then see that, okay, I did call with this person, and I had this document saved on it, and they had this calendar meeting, and then I had these 5 emails that I exchanged recently, and it all has the context, basically. Like, I was working on this deal, or I was trying to buy something, or maybe we had the project together, and that context is valuable. And we think that you can only have that when you give power to the people, and not into this kind of centralized silos, be it a silo of an application that is owned by a singular company, or a silo of a social network.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think that LinkedIn has gotten out of, like, or is removing their API? Like, what do you think the reason behind it is? Because they've, like you've said, they've kind of left a hole in the industry. And
I think it's poor arrogance. You know, it's just basically we are so big, we have everybody in, like, we shouldn't give any benefit to anybody else out of this data that we have aggregated, and this kind of like ego of a large company. It's always the same thing. Like, I mean, look at Facebook and Twitter. They used to have lots of apps in the ecosystem. What did they do with those? Twitter threw everybody on the wayside when they started monetizing with advertisements.
That's very true. That's very true. So where do you see kind of Facebook maybe coming into all of this? Like, well, with the contacts, and because so much business is done on Facebook these days. I mean, I have a whole set of business contacts that are. I have to specifically ask them for their email, actually, to kind of send them other stuff.
I highly doubt that businesses are very eager to sell their soul to the advertisers of Facebook. It's just something that, yes, maybe individual people will benefit from the context of having everybody on the same platform, but at the same time, if you look at the aggressiveness of the advertising growth in Facebook in general, I don't believe that they don't use my data for their own advertising purposes.
Oh, I do not believe that at all. I 100% agree with you. They are totally using my data to advertise directly to me.
Yeah, 100%. So one day I biked home from my work with my phone in my pocket, and I did absolutely nothing with Facebook and things. And then I get to home, and I put in my mind when I was passing an interesting-looking Thai restaurant that this could be an interesting place to visit someday. Mm-hmm. And I got home, and I got advertisement of the very same place on Facebook right in front of me. I'm like, there's no way that they will know that I was interested in this place other than tracking my location. Then I go in and I find out that they had this background location tracking on, and they actually tracked all the restaurants that I went past when I was biking home. So I obviously instantly shut it down. But you know, like, it was creepy to realize that they actually knew exactly where I was going at every moment, and having all this information available to directed advertising to me.
Yeah, that's the other conversation that's very interesting to have around context is that what about privacy and security concerns? I mean, fundamentally, I was talking to a security expert, and they said, well, the only way we're ever going to be secure online is to have a new internet, because fundamentally the internet was built to be an open sharing platform that didn't care about encryption and all these other things. So we've built up on a base that just isn't secure.
And this brings us to the main point of what we built this company on. So Inbot was built with an idea that we should build a business model that enables us to offer a free API and free application for the end users, and have a meaningful business model that carries it without having to sell our soul to advertisers. So what we did is that we thought that, okay, if you take the data that is meaningful for the business that you are working with, and let, under your own consent, sell that data to the business in the same way that the other companies are selling it to advertisers, suddenly it becomes a transaction that is a meaningful one, and it delivers value on both sides. It gives us a business model, and then enables us to offer this application for free for everybody who wants to use it, and with absolutely every feature that we ever offer. So can you talk a little bit more about how you make your applications secure? Because I know this is something that everyone's kind of curious about. Like, how do you know whether or not the company that you're dealing with is being secure? To say it is one thing, but it's to prove it is another. And I guess I'm just curious from your position, how do you? So the only way, because nothing is infinitely secure. So in that sense, you can only address security by policy. Mm-hmm. So in our case, the policy is that first of all, we apply industry standard best practice security technologies like perfect forward for session control in addition to SSL and all these other things that we are implying. So currently our security audit is A+, which is the same as with the best in breed industry players. Not only that, but we refuse to store your emails and stuff like this in our own servers. So when we don't do that, then there's no risk. So by adding the context without storing all your data, we can add value without taking anything away from you or exposing your data to some threats that are unforeseen. So yes, the companies will want to store copies of the information that you have in their own servers, and we will provide means for that over the APIs, but we don't have to store it ourselves.
Awesome. I'd like to come back around to one other topic, just because in the back of my head, I was like, oh, we should have talked longer about that. And it's definitely about artificial intelligence in the cloud, because I really liked what you were saying about taking the baby steps to move forward, right? It's a lot of data, and it's important to take the right context steps correctly and slowly, I think, because some of the applications out there are trying to, I think you're right, bite off more where they can chew a little bit. So there's the baby steps that we're seeing now with AI in the cloud, where we're starting to provide context with different silos of information. But where do you see it going?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the mobile use cases, so we obviously as a mobile first company are very much looking at how the context in mobile is evolving, and how we can help people to do a better job with their mobile devices. So what we do here is that we look at the most popular apps and most engaging apps on mobile. So right now it's pretty clear that chat is the way to go forward. Yeah. So Slack is very popular among the business users, but WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, like all of these messaging tools that are out there are basically proving to us that the vast majority of the engagement of the end users is in messaging. So what we do is that we enable you to converse with our intelligence via this messaging mechanism, but also with your workmates, and the other people that you're connecting with. So adding this conversation is the human touch to it, and then mixing that conversation with artificial intelligence, by picking up pieces of data that are meaningful for the business out of the conversation. When we understand that this is something that is relevant for the business, is a way of mixing the two parts together, making the human-like interface with the artificial intelligence picking up the pieces.
Oh, very interesting. I actually didn't see that angle coming with analyzing the chat. It's true. Business right now in chat is 100% the main trend in Asia. Whenever I travel to mainland China, they don't ask for my email. They ask for my WeChat. Yeah. Right, and they 100% only want to do business on WeChat. So it's very true that instant messaging and chat is the driving force of business today. But what do you think it's going to be tomorrow? If you can just say chats today and then maybe.
No, so I do think that you can obviously talk over your voice and other things, but I think this kind of natural language processing approaches that you might have. You say things that you want, and you get answers to your questions. You get solutions to your problems via this conversational interface. That scales the best I can ever see. It scales with the wearable technology. You can talk to your watch. You can have all these different interactions. And I think that's going to be the main interface. This conversational interface will be the main interface for time to come. I can't see how human-machine interface can evolve much further than that. Yes, maybe at some point they can read our brainwaves. We don't have to even say anything. We can just think. But right now, I think that's the quite scalable approach to the whole problem. And you can increase the complexity on the background without end users ever noticing anything. You just basically see a more comprehensive problems being solved to you. So now the baby who is out there helping you is becoming an adult. Maybe first a teenager and then an adult. It starts solving more and more complex problems. But Absolutely. The interface still stays simple. You just converse with it.
Absolutely, you're completely right, and I wish that we had more time, because the human-machine interface is definitely one of the more interesting topics for how that's going to become a lot more useful. Because right now it's cool, but it's not particularly there yet. So I'm glad to hear that you think that's going to be coming next in the evolution of AI in the cloud. So this has been Mikko from Inbot. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
Thanks, Nicole.
So this has been the CeBIT live stream. We are going to watch some videos about Atom-based tablets on the show floor here at CeBIT from Steve. So PN devices and some luxury tablets.